attained through observation and practice. So science is in fact the study of observing things and creating knowledge from there. Now evolution says that dogs came from rocks. If you go really, really far, far back enough, that there was a rock and a rock created a bacteria and a bacteria created a vegetable and a vegetable created this and something else created that and finally there was a dog. That doesn't really make sense, but we'll talk more about that later. And number 6, lastly, microevolution, and that's variation within kind. Now, when we're talking about this one has been the only one that has been observed. There are variations within kinds. We know that, and this happens. There's not one kind of dog. There are many kinds of dogs. There are big dogs and small dogs, long-haired dog, short-haired dog, curly-haired dog, straight-haired dog. There are lots of kinds of dogs. Some, in my personal opinion, are absolutely useless. Regardless of that fact, we have various kinds of dogs, and they prove with various different kinds. Now, in my opinion, from research and based on science, the first 5 definitions of evolution are stupid. It doesn't happen. It's not science. It actually has to be believed. There's enough gap in there that asks someone to have a little bit of faith. Now, in fact, I believe, and pardon me for the lack of this term, I'm trying to find a better word in my vernacular to explain this, but I believe that evolution is in fact a religion. And the reason why I say it's a religion is because it requires faith. More faith than some other things, but let's call it what it is. Christianity, a religion, requires faith. Evolution, a religion, because it does in fact require faith to believe it too. So we're just calling apples apples, oranges for oranges. Very simple that. But evolution, in and of itself, based on the very definition of science, is not a fact. It's a bunch of assumptions, which we'll look into how they assume the various things they do. So today, I'm not saying evolution is stupid because the Bible says it's wrong. That's an unending argument that people go on forever. Well, the Bible says it's wrong, so it's wrong. No, I mean, we can talk more about that, but I'm saying evolution is wrong today because science says it's wrong. Because there's no evidence. This is not a religious argument today. We're going to talk some strict science. And we're going to do our best to explain it. Now, of course, we could go on and on and on about this, but we'll try and condense it down. So let's get into this. Evolution says millions and billions ago, there was a big bang. Everybody say, bang! Just like that. Billions and billions of years ago, there was a big bang. Now, right there, when they tell me that there was a big bang, my first question is, well, what exploded? And where did you get the energy to explode it? Right, obviously, there was a big bang, but what exploded? Where did it come from? Nobody really knows. Now, according to the Big Bang Theory, it all started with a tiny little dot, and that dot exploded, and now we have our universe. Seems kind of silly, but the whole theory started by this Belgian guy named George Latimer, and he said this. George Latimer said this basically: the original matter that exploded, in referring to the Big Bang, which is the guy who came up with the theory right now, says the original matter was no more than a few light years in diameter. Now, a few in very minimum can be 2 light years. We know a light year is 5.8 trillion kilometers, so we're looking at miles. So we're looking at approximately 12 trillion miles long, or big is how big this original matter was. Well, then he goes on to say in 1965, I got to revise my little statement. It wasn't really that big. It was 275 million miles, sorry. That's a lot smaller. But in fact, he goes ahead and he revives it, and in 1972, he reduced it to 71 million miles. I mean, I don't know what he's thinking now. Now in 1974, he's thinking 54,000 miles. That's how big this thing was. So now it was huge, now it's getting smaller. Okay, fine, whatever it is. He goes on into 1983, and look, a big jump. He says, it is the trillionth the diameter of a proton, which is very small. It's very trillionth the diameter of a proton. And then afterwards, they're saying it was nothing. Nothing exploded. Okay, let's look at this. I don't know if you can read, it's a little blurry because I was scanning this in here, but it says right here, all the matter in the universe was condensed into a very dense and very hot region that may have been much smaller than the period on this page. Okay, sounds good so far. I think that's kind of stupid, but sure, that's condensed down to the thing on this page. And then look at this next one. Look what he says. Nothing really means nothing. From this state of nothingness, the universe began in a gigantic explosion. You with me? Is it making sense to you? Absolutely not to me. So this idea that all the matter in the universe was brought together and put on this little dot, and it spun faster and faster, and then all of a sudden, as it was spinning, bang, you get this big bang, and pieces flew off, and all of a sudden created stars and planets and orbits and all this kind of stuff, and imagine this billions of years later, here we are. Right? Kind of strange, but there's a problem that nobody can explain. A couple of questions that make absolutely no sense that there's no answers to. Number one, where did the original matter came from? If all this matter was put on a dot, which doesn't really make sense, but if it did make sense, where did it come from, right? Secondly, where did the energy come from? Because to create a bang, you need energy. But where did the energy come from to create this big bang? And even if that were the case, and you found the matter and the energy, well, how on earth do we explain universal laws like gravity and centrifugal force? How do you explain these laws? So let me explain. Let's say you had a merry-go-round. Everybody seen one of these in their life? How many's ever one thrown up on one of these? Yeah, me too. Yeah, when I was a little kid, it's like, go, go, go. Yeah. So we got this merry-go-round here, and let's say there's a bunch of kids on it, and then they ask the college football team to come. And Mr. College Football, guys, I want you to spin this merry-go-round with these kids on it. So okay, now the kids are going to go through 4 phases. Ready? Go. Phase number 1, they're going to be like screaming, go, go faster, yeah, awesome, amazing, let's go. Spin, spin faster. That's phase number 1. Now around 30 kilometers an hour, they began to stop screaming, phase number 2, and now they're holding on for dear life in quiet desperation. Phase number 2. Now around 60 kilometers an hour, at this point the screaming starts again, but now it's to stop, slow down, oh my God, I'm gonna die, let me off. Right? Phase 3. And as you can guess, around 100 kilometers an hour, we enter phase 4. The kids start to fly off the merry-go-round. Now there's a very simple principle of physics here. If a merry-go-round is spinning counterclockwise as it's spinning, the kids who fly off are going to be spinning counterclockwise. Obviously, that's a law of physics. Until it hits something or in some form of resistance, in this case a tree, then they will stop spinning. But in a frictionless environment, it will keep spinning in the direction that the original thing was spinning in. This is a law of physics known as the conservation of angular momentum. What it basically means, if a spinning object breaks off in a frictionless environment, the elements that have broken off will continue to spin in the same direction. Very simple. Why? Because the outside spins faster than the inside. Very, very simple, a law of physics. Now, if this is the case, which it is in fact, this is a physics law, and then if the whole universe began as a swirling little thing on a dot that then blew up, it bears to ask the question, then why are there 2 planets in our solar system that spin backwards? And on top of that, why are there another 6 moons in our solar system that spin backwards? In fact, it can't even explain how Jupiter, Saturn, and Neptune have moons spinning both ways. It doesn't make sense. The law of physics say from the conservation of angular momentum that is not possible. So why is that happening in our universe? My opinion, I think God did that just to make the Big Bang look stupid. It doesn't really make sense. Now, there are tons of verses out there that say God created and stretched out the universe. Let's look at one of the ton. Thus saith God, the Lord, who created the heavens and the earth, and he stretched them out, which proves that there is an ever-expanding universe, which science proves is happening right now, and it explains why. Now, it was God who did it, not a Big Bang. It was actually God. And I mean, if there was a Big Bang, or the Big Bang theory were true, no matter, the matter, scientifically speaking, would be evenly distributed. But it's not. You got clumps of stars that we call galaxies, and in between the galaxies, you have millions and millions and billions of light years of nothing that we call voids that are in between them. So the Big Bang, in essence, is a dud, and this is just one of the very many millions reasons of why it is. Now, we can't spend too much time here, so let's move on past the Big Bang. And they teach that the Earth formed from a hot molten mass 4.6 billion years ago. A hot molten mass. It was this burning rock that was there, and the hot molten mass over millions and millions of years cooled down and turned into this hard rock crust. So think about this. 20 billion years ago, there was a Big Bang, where nothing exploded and everything was created. And then 4.6 billion years ago, the Earth was cooled down and it formed a rock. And then it rained on the rock